Before we begin, let me ask you something. Have you ever watched a person's entire life change in a single moment? Not with fireworks, not with grand speeches, but with one choice, made when nobody else dared to move. Tonight's story begins quietly, in an ordinary place on an ordinary day, until one heartbeat, one breath, and one decision pulled two lives into a storm neither of them saw coming. And what happened next? Well, that's something you'll want to hear from the very beginning. So settle in, take a deep breath, and let's step into the moment that started it all. The rain had a way of swallowing Philadelphia whole, soft at first, then relentless tapping against metal railings and echoing off brick walls until the entire city sounded like it was breathing in the dark. Marcus Hall sat on the cracked balcony of his rundown apartment, listening to that breath. Not seeing much, he didn't need to. The night spoke loud enough. Somewhere below, a bus hissed as it braked. A siren wailed far off, fading into the drizzle. From the unit next door came the slow, rhythmic thump of someone's television left on too long. Ordinary sounds, but tonight they pressed on him like a weight he could no longer lift. He turned his phone over in his hand. The screen kept lighting up. Ting, ting, ting. Notifications. Mentions. Headlines. He finally unlocked it and the glow washed over his face as if to remind him he was still here, still alive, even if the world didn't seem to want that. Janitor crossed the line with unconscious CEO, single father or silent predator, internet divided. 8 seconds that will ruin a career. He swallowed hard. His thumb trembled as he scrolled, and every headline sounded like a verdict being read out loud. The kind of verdict you don't get to appeal. Another ting. Another notification. He didn't even bother muting them anymore. It felt pointless, like trying to silence a storm by whispering. Inside the apartment, the old TV flickered in its sleep mode glow. Marcus glanced back through the sliding glass door. His son, Eli, 10 years old and all bones and bravery, was knocked out on the sofa. Barely a blanket over him. A bowl of half-eaten macaroni cold on the floor. The boy had fought sleep to wait for him. Marcus breathed in, letting the cold night air scrape the back of his throat. How did I get here, he wondered. How did I become a headline? How did a good deed turn into something twisted? He whispered into the quiet. I was just trying to save a life. His voice barely carried past the balcony railing. A gust of wind pushed a drizzle of rain under the awning, brushing against his skin, cool, almost accusatory. He closed his eyes. And in the darkness behind his eyelids the memory slammed back. Not the boardroom yet. No, an older sound. A sound burned into him from years ago. A fire alarm screaming overhead. Boots slamming down a staircase. A little girl's voice calling for help. He could still feel the sweat on his neck, the smoke clawing at his lungs. That day had carved a scar into him, one he rarely touched. One he never talked about. He had failed then, or at least he believed he had. And when Victoria Hale collapsed in that boardroom, those old ghosts rose up and took over. His hands moved on instinct. His training kicked in. His heart ran ahead of his mind. He didn't think about titles, cameras, rules, consequences. He just thought, not again. Not another life on my conscience. But none of that mattered now. Not to the internet. Not to the company, not to anyone who had only seen the 8 seconds stripped from the truth. Another alert buzzed. Someone tagged him. Someone else cursed him out. Someone else demanded he be arrested. Someone else speculated about what kind of man he really was. Marcus let the phone fall to his lap. A hollow ache expanded in his chest. Behind him, the TV murmured an infomercial faint music, an actor pretending to care about some miracle product. Eli shifted on the couch, letting out a tiny sigh. The boy slept like the world was still safe. Marcus felt something inside him crack. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, listening to the rain, listening to the cars, listening to the heartbeat of a city that no longer trusted him. I saved her, he whispered to no one. I swear I saved her. Even saying it aloud sounded like a plea, a defense, a confession. His mind replayed that moment, the boardroom, the shock on the executives' faces, the panic, the shouting. And then 1, 2, 3. His own voice steady and low, counting compressions, the sound of ribs shifting under pressure, a woman's faint breath rattling in her throat, a shout, someone yelling at him to stop, a fist hitting his back. Another voice, panicked, furious, calling for security. Then darkness, confusion, silence. Marcus rubbed his face with both hands. The stubble scraped against his palms. He wasn't tired, he was beyond tired, beyond anything a night's sleep could cure. He looked again at his son, small, trusting, unaware of the storm circling their lives. Marcus had once promised himself that Eli would never see him as weak, that he'd be a father who stood tall no matter how hard life hit. But tonight he felt like a man already halfway erased. He forced himself to stand. The balcony creaked. The rain softened, then swelled again, drumming on the metal railing like impatient fingers. He took one long breath and let it anchor him. Finally, he stepped inside, sliding the door shut. The apartment felt colder than the balcony. Or maybe that cold was coming from inside him now. He knelt beside Eli, brushing a hand over the boy's hair. Eli murmured something in his sleep, leaning unconsciously toward the touch. Marcus's chest tightened. To understand why a man who saved a life was condemned as a monster, we have to go back. Not to this night, not to the rain, or the headlines, or the broken balcony, but to the morning when everything changed. A soft, whooshing sound seemed to cut through the night like a curtain being pulled open, like time shifting. The city noise faded. The rain thinned into silence. And then, as if the world inhaled sharply, the sound of a busy office burst into existence. Heels, clicking printers, humming voices murmuring about billions. The past had opened its door. The sound of rain faded, replaced by the crisp, polished rhythm of a corporate morning. Heels ticked sharply against marble floors. Printers buzzed in steady pulses. Phones rang, then clicked into hushed conversations about markets, deadlines, mergers. Inside the Hale and Locke headquarters, the world felt engineered, precise, high-functioning, and wound tight enough that even the air seemed to hum with productivity. And at its center, behind a set of glass walls overlooking the skyline, the boardroom vibrated with a different kind of pressure. Victoria Hale's voice carried through the room, steady, clipped, impeccably controlled. If we finalize the merger by Q4, projected growth exceeds expectations by almost 14%. Even without seeing her, one could hear the posture in her tone, a CEO who had carved her way through a male-dominated industry who could freeze a room with a single raised eyebrow. Her sentences landed like deliberate steps on a cold marble floor, confident, unshakable. Across from her, Graham Locke murmured in agreement. His voice was gravelly older, the kind of tone people instinctively trusted. He had mentored Victoria since she was 23. He had taught her how to survive in rooms where no one wanted her to win. This morning, he spoke with careful calm. Your numbers are solid. Victoria, the board will respond well. She nodded, though her breath caught slightly, something no one else seemed to notice. Not yet. Just outside the boardroom, down the hallway where senior staff rarely bothered to look, Marcus Hall balanced on the second step of a maintenance ladder. A flickering light above him buzzed irritably. He adjusted the fixture with a quiet grunt. He was used to being invisible in places like this. The clink of his tools didn't fit the language of investment portfolios and billion-dollar deals. His boots didn't match the polished shoes around him. His uniform, navy blue, clean but worn, was the kind of fabric that didn't belong anywhere near glass-walled conference rooms. From where he stood, Marcus could hear fragments through the boardroom door. Stock price projected to stabilize. International investors expanding our footprint. He didn't care about mergers. That had never been his world. But the voices, sharp stressed to controlled, set something uneasy vibrating inside his chest. He'd heard voices like that in emergency calls right before something went wrong. He tried to shake the feeling off and tighten the last screw. That's when he heard it. A glass clattering. Then a pause. Then a sound he recognized instantly, one he could feel in his bones. A body hitting the floor. Inside the boardroom, Victoria had faltered mid-sentence. Her breath hitched. The edges of her vision thinned. A strange heat pressed at her chest, spreading outward like a fist. She tried to speak again, but the words dissolved on her tongue. The last thing she registered was Graham's startled whisper. Victoria. Then the world dropped out from under her. The thud of her body striking the hardwood floor rippled through the entire room. Chairs scraped. Someone gasped sharply. A cup spilled coffee splattering across documents. And then chaos. Oh my God. Victoria, call security. Don't touch her, HR will kill us. Is she breathing? Someone check, but no one moved closer. They hovered around her like frightened statues paralyzed by fear of doing something wrong, fear of liability, fear of scandal, fear of everything except letting her die. Marcus didn't think he reacted. The memory of another collapse, another set of lifeless eyes in a smoke-filled hallway punched through him. His heart slammed once violently, and then he moved. The ladder clattered to the side as he jumped off, sprinting toward the boardroom. He pushed the door open so hard it smacked the wall. Inside, executives turned startled like they'd just seen a stranger break into their private world. "What are you doing here?" someone barked. Marcus barely heard them. His focus locked on the still body on the floor, her breathing shallow, her pulse faint, her skin cooling too fast. No, not again. You're not losing someone today. He knelt beside her, checking her airway, tilting her head. Her lashes fluttered slightly. A soft, barely there exhale rolled against his fingers. "She needs CPR," he said. Not loud, not dramatic, just fact. A fact no one else was willing to face. "We can't just let you. That's the CEO. This could violate." He ignored them all. He started compressions, counting under his breath, low, controlled, precise. 1, 2, 3. Come on, keep breathing. 4, 5. His palms pressed rhythmically against her sternum. The sound of compressions echoed sharply in the silent boardroom, flesh against bone, life against death. He leaned down for rescue breaths, feeling her chest rise faintly beneath his hands. On the far side of the room, a young assistant slowly lifted her phone. The soft click of recording barely registered over the compressions. Graham noticed, but he didn't stop her. Not yet, not when it mattered. Is he kissing her?" someone whispered. "It doesn't look right. Should we pull him off? This is going to be a PR nightmare." Marcus didn't hear their panic. He only heard the pounding in his own ears and the instructor's voice from years ago. "If they're not breathing, you are their chance." He pressed harder. He breathed for her again. But then a hand yanked at his shoulder, jerking him backward. Marcus stumbled, his breath erupting in pain. "What the—" he snapped, trying to twist free. "You need to stop," someone shouted. "Security is on the way. You're hurting her. You're out of line." "Janitor," Marcus's voice broke raw, desperate. "I'm saving her." But another shove knocked him sideways. A punch landed between his shoulder blades. Someone yelled for him to get away from her. He staggered, breath-ragged pain shooting down his side. Still, he lunged back toward Victoria, reaching for her pulse. 1, 2, come on. His counting was drowned out by shouts, footsteps, the crackle of someone calling security. The assistant's phone captured everything: chaos, confusion, a man fighting to save a life while a room full of leaders fought to stop him. In just a few seconds, this room will decide the fate of 2 lives. Marcus Hall will keep fighting, but the world will only see 8 seconds. The sound cut abruptly. The world didn't collapse all at once. It came apart in vibrations, tiny, sharp, relentless. First, the vibration of a phone on a cheap wooden table, then another, and another. Buzz, ping, ping, buzz. Marcus's phone rattled so violently it almost slid off the edge. He didn't pick it up. His hands were still shaking from the boardroom, the shouting, the shoves, the moment he felt a rib move beneath his palms, the moment he thought he had lost her. He sat hunched on a plastic chair just outside the security office, the hallway cold and echoing. His breath still carried the metallic taste of adrenaline. But the notifications kept coming, each one a needle. He finally lifted the phone. And there it was, the clip. 8 seconds. 8 seconds that stripped away everything that mattered. The video had no sound beyond muffled shouting. No context, no compressions, no counting. No one recording themselves standing back and doing nothing. Just him. Just his hands. Just his breath over Victoria's mouth. Just the angle that made it look like something else entirely. A voiceover from some anonymous user hissed through the speakers, "Who is this janitor? Look how close he gets. Is she unconscious? What is he doing? This is wrong. So wrong." Then laughter. Actual laughter. Marcus felt his stomach hollow out. He forced himself to breathe, but the sound came thin and broken. He replayed the clip once, then twice. His pulse thudded in his ears. They don't see the compressions. They don't see her chest rising because of me. They don't hear me counting. They don't hear the panic. They don't hear anything except what they want to believe. The video ended and replayed automatically an endless loop of accusation. Then a voice snapped through the hallway. Mr. Hall. Marcus looked up. 2 HR representatives stood just outside the office. Their voices were smooth, neutral, too neutral. The kind of calm that often came right before a sentence was served. "One moment, please," the woman said. "Let's handle this professionally." Professionally. The word tasted like chalk. They ushered him inside. The air was stiff, filtered, unnatural. Papers shuffled, pens clicked. Everything in the room sounded too crisp, too sterile, like nothing human was meant to survive in it. The HR director cleared her throat. "Mr. Hall, we've reviewed the footage submitted online." He tried to speak, but she lifted a hand, polite, dismissive, patronizing. "We're not here to discuss CPR technique. We're here to address optics." Optics. Marcus's voice cracked. She stopped breathing. We're aware of your perspective," the director interrupted. "However, the clip currently circulating raises concerns about inappropriate physical contact." Inappropriate. He blinked, stunned. "I was performing rescue breaths." She was dying. The male HR rep leaned forward. Given her position, any contact of that nature carries significant liability risk. Marcus felt something in him recoil. "I didn't think about liability. I thought about saving her life." That the woman replied is precisely the issue. You acted outside your role training and authorization. Therefore, you expose the company to potential legal complications. Marcus stared at them. Unbelieving, horrified. "I was a firefighter," he whispered. "I was EMT certified for 8 years. I've done CPR more times than I can count." The man flipped a page on his clipboard. "Those certifications are expired." "Because I stopped doing the job," Marcus said, voice trembling. "Not because I forgot how to save a life." Silence stretched across the room, thin and cutting. Finally, the director slid a document toward him. "Effective immediately, you are suspended pending investigation." Suspended. That word hit harder than the punch someone threw at him earlier. Marcus shook his head slowly. "Suspended. For saving her." "We appreciate your intention," the woman replied. "But the company must protect its image." "Image?" Marcus whispered. "Is that what she was? A photograph, a brand asset?" The man exhaled. "Security will escort you out. We'll pack your personal items." A cardboard box hit the table with a hollow thump. Something inside Marcus sank. Deeper than the humiliation. Deeper than anger. Something primal shame mixed with disbelief. He stood legs heavy and let security lead him through the building like he was a stranger. The hallway felt colder than before. The footsteps behind him echoed too loudly, the kind of echo usually reserved for criminals. He didn't fight it, didn't speak, didn't look up. Downstairs, he stepped outside into the gray afternoon. Rain had stopped, but the pavement still hissed beneath cars rolling by. He walked toward the bus stop, carrying the small cardboard box. Inside, it were three things: his gloves, a photo Eli drew of the two of them fishing, and the ragged little thermos he used during night shifts. Everything else, the years, the sacrifices, the loyalty, remained inside the building, disposable. His phone buzzed again. He glanced down and nearly dropped it. His own face stared back at him from the local news stream. Janitor under review for questionable contact with CEO during medical incident. Experts debate, was it CPR or misconduct? The host chuckled lightly, the studio audience murmuring along. Marcus froze at the bus stop, chest tightening. A tug on his sleeve. He looked down. Eli. Large, worried eyes. A backpack hanging crooked on one shoulder. He must have come straight from school. "Dad, that's you on TV," Eli whispered. "Why are they saying you're bad?" The world spun. The breath punched out of him. He knelt to meet his son's gaze, but the words wouldn't come. His throat was raw, scraped hollow. They don't understand, buddy," he finally managed. "Sometimes people talk before they know the truth." Eli stared at him for a long moment. Then he whispered, "But I know you'd never hurt anyone." Marcus's heart clenched so hard it almost hurt. He pulled Eli close, burying his face in the boy's hair, breathing in that faint scent of school chalk and cotton, trying not to break. Then the phone rang. Unknown caller. He let it ring, but it didn't stop. He finally answered. "Mr. Hall," came the HR director's voice, cold and distant. "This is to inform you that your employment has been terminated. For the sake of all parties involved, we recommend you do not return to the premises or contact any personnel." Marcus closed his eyes. Rain began again, light at first, then heavier. He didn't speak, didn't plead, didn't argue. He simply ended the call. He saved a life and lost everything. The rain grew louder, and something darker waited just beyond that sound, the storm that would test the last pieces of him still standing. The first sound Victoria Hale heard was the slow, steady beep. Beep. Beep of a heart monitor. Not voices, not a boardroom, not the hum of 1,000 decisions waiting outside her office door, just that quiet, stubborn rhythm, her own heart clawing its way back to life. She inhaled the scent of antiseptic drifting into her lungs. A soft hiss of oxygen flowed beside her. Someone whispered near the doorway, their voice low and careful. "She's awake." Her eyelids felt heavy, like someone had placed weights on them. She forced them open. The hospital lights were muted, not harsh. Someone must have dimmed them. Shadows flickered as a nurse adjusted an IV line. Victoria swallowed. Her throat felt raw. "What happened?" She managed her voice hoarse, barely more than breath. The doctor stepped forward, middle-aged, calm, the kind of tone that didn't panic even when the world burned. "You collapsed during a meeting. Cardiac arrhythmia triggered by exhaustion, dehydration, and extreme stress." He paused. "You're lucky. Very lucky." Victoria blinked at him, confused. "Lucky? Yes." He glanced at his notes. If no one had started CPR right away, you might not have come back. For the first time since waking, something sharp cut through her fog. CPR. Someone had touched her. Someone had been there in the second she couldn't remember. Her voice lowered. Who performed it? The room went strangely still. The nurse shifted. The doctor hesitated. "It was handled internally," he said finally. "A staff member. Everything's been taken care of." "Taken care of," Victoria repeated slowly. "I asked who." Another silence. Longer this time. Thick enough that she could feel it pressing on her chest. "That information isn't necessary," the doctor finally said. "What matters is that you're safe now. rest. But the words scraped wrong across her mind. Victoria Hale was not a woman who accepted half answers. She built an empire by tearing through smoke screens and illusions. Yet now they were deciding what she didn't need to know. She closed her eyes, but not in surrender. Something inside her, something dormant, bruised, but unbroken, stirred. That night, when the room had quieted and the hallway lights dimmed to warm, Amber Victoria drifted into a thin, restless sleep. Then came the dream. Not images, sounds. A man's voice, deep and urgent, trembling in a way that felt too raw to ignore. "Don't you dare die on me. Come on. Breathe." She heard the pressure of hands on her chest, her own weak breath struggling to rise. A faint, desperate whisper, "Stay with me." She jolted awake, heart racing against the monitor. Rain tapped at the hospital window, the sound strangely familiar, like the night itself was trying to remind her of something she'd missed. She pressed a hand to her forehead. Who was that man? Why could she hear him so clearly? And why did it sound like he was saving her life and pleading for something more than just a pulse? Her pulse stuttered. Fear. No, not fear. Something different. Something she couldn't name yet. By morning, her weakness was gone, replaced by a simmering irritation, a sensation she knew too well. The irritation of being handled, shielded, managed. She reached for her phone with shaky fingers. Her inbox was full of incident reports from security HR/PR, all clinical, sterile, euphemistic. The employee involved in the rescue attempt, allegations under review, internal resolution recommended. No name. Not once. Not in any document. Someone had scrubbed him out. Her jaw tightened. She clicked the internal legal memo. It mentioned employee misconduct contact during medical emergency suspension. Her throat tightened. They punished him. The person who saved her. A slow, cold wave moved through her chest. Not fear, not confusion. Anger. Righteous, shaking anger. Victoria tapped her screen again, opening the security request form. I want the raw footage from Boardroom A, timestamp 9:14 a.m., same day she typed. Within minutes, she received a message back from corporate security footage unavailable. With legal. Cannot release without counsel approval. She stared at the message, then laughed once, a single, humorless breath. So this was how far they would go to keep her in the dark. She dialed the head of security herself. Straight to voicemail. She tried the chief legal officer. A scripted, polished assistant deflected her. I'm so sorry, Ms. Hale. He's in meetings all day. Meetings. Of course, meetings about her. Meetings without her. Victoria sat back against the pillows, hands trembling not from weakness but fury. They thought she was too fragile to know the truth, too compromised, too emotional. She had spent years building walls of steel around herself, and now those same walls were locking her out. Her breath hitched not from fear but memory. That voice, that desperate whisper in the dark. She needed answers, and she knew exactly where to get them. That night, long after nurses stopped hovering and the halls quieted, Victoria made one more call. Not to legal, not to security, not to HR, to a man she trusted her hire, not the boards. Her personal security specialist, someone who understood loyalty differently than the corporate handbook did. The phone rang twice. A familiar voice answered. Ms. Hale. Shouldn't you be resting? I need the raw footage from Boardroom A, she said softly. Her voice didn't rise. It cooled. Not the edited version. Not the summary. The original. A beat of silence. Then you'll have it in an hour. Her breath eased for the first time since waking. 90 minutes later, her email pinged. A single attachment. A video file unfiltered. Her heart thudded as she tapped it open. The screen froze on the first frame, herself standing at the head of the table, alive, confident mid-sentence. Her throat tightened. For the first time, Victoria Hale was about to witness the moment her world ended, through the unblinking eye of a camera. The video played, And his truth was finally coming for her. What she saw next would break something open. The video began without warning. No fade-in, no courtesy pause, just reality raw and unvarnished. Victoria's breath caught before she even understood what she was seeing. It opened on her own voice, strong and unwavering, echoing off the polished glass walls of the boardroom. Projected growth exceeds expectations. Then the glitch in her breath. The hesitation no one else had noticed. The soft clink of her water glass. And then the collapse. Her body hit the floor with a dull, terrifying thud. The kind of sound that didn't need visuals to be understood. A sound that told a story all on its own. Victoria watched it happen from outside herself, like witnessing her own death from above. Her chest tightened. Her fingers dug into the blanket. She barely heard the panicked voices in the room. Her mind had tunneled into the silence that followed. A silence thick with fear, uncertainty, cowardice. Then the boardroom door slammed open, and Marcus entered the frame. Not as a janitor, not as a man in a Navy uniform, not as the creep the headlines had painted. He came in like someone who had run through fire before, like someone who knew exactly what it meant to lose a life in their hands. Victoria watched the footage zoomed in on him, his movements quick, instinctive, purposeful. She saw him kneel beside her as if his knees belonged there, as if he'd done it 100 times. He checked her airway, tilted her head gently, listened for a breath she wasn't giving. Someone off-camera muttered, "We should call security." Someone else whispered, "Don't touch her. Legal will kill us." But Marcus didn't hesitate. He never even looked at them. He started compressions, hard, steady, rhythmic. The microphone from the corner camera picked up the faintest sound of him counting. 1, 2, 3. Breathe. Come on. Don't you dare. His voice cracked a sound so human, so unfiltered it made Victoria's throat tighten. And then she saw it. What the internet had never been shown. The tears in his eyes. The strain in his jaw. The desperate fear flickering across his face. This wasn't a man crossing boundaries. This was a man wrestling death itself. Then came the chaos hands pulling at him, bodies shouting over him, a blow to his back. The camera caught him stumbling but forcing his way back to her again. He wasn't aggressive. He wasn't violating anything. He was refusing to let her die. When the video ended, the last thing captured was his whisper, barely audible. "Please breathe. Please. Not again." Victoria's fingers trembled. A chill swept across her arms. Not again. What had he lost before? What pain had he carried silently into that room? She dragged a hand over her face, exhaling shakily. The walls of her hospital room felt too small, suddenly too close. Then she clicked open the internal HR email that had arrived earlier by accident. A report labeling him excessive force, inappropriate physical contact, unclear motives. She pressed a hand to her forehead. The lies weren't just careless, they were deliberate. She pulled up his employee file, something she'd never done before. It should have been routine dry, a 2-minute glance at a low-level worker's history. Instead, she found a story she should have known. Marcus Hall, former firefighter, EMT, 8 years. Commendations, 4. Injury on duty, 1. Psychological leave, 1. She clicked the report. A fire, a family trapped, a child he couldn't save. Victoria closed her eyes. The pieces fit now, the voice in the dark, the desperation, the tremble in his hands. That morning, he hadn't just saved her. He'd faced the ghost that had been hunting him for years and still chose to try. Her breath shuddered. He saved her. And her company, the empire she'd built, crushed him. All because the board needed someone to blame. All because she wasn't conscious to stop it. Guilt curled inside her, deep and sharp. She clicked on another document, the one labeled Employee Investigation Outcome. It stated his misconduct had compromised company optics and advised termination as the safest route. Safe for whom? Not for him. Not for Eli. Not for the truth. Victoria pushed the laptop aside and stood, legs still weak but determined. She walked toward the window, listening to the steady hum of nighttime traffic below. Her breath fogged the glass. In all her years of leadership, she had prided herself on integrity, on doing the hard thing when the easy path was corrupt. But this had happened under her name, under her leadership. Under the system she claimed to control, and a good man, a man who had saved her life, was paying the cost for it. Her jaw tightened. She grabbed her coat from the chair, ignoring the pull in her chest. She was still pale, still weak, still healing. But none of that mattered. She would not lie in a hospital bed while an innocent man lost everything. She reached for her keys. Her security specialist's voice came through the phone speaker. "Ma'am, it's late. Should you really leave the hospital?" "No," she said calmly, "but I'm leaving anyway." Outside, the cold night rushed against her face as she stepped into the parking structure. The murmur of city life, a dog barking in the distance, a car driving through a puddle, the faint buzz of a street lamp formed a soundtrack that felt almost like absolution. She slid into the driver's seat. The engine started with a low rumble. Her GPS blinked to life, showing the route toward a neighborhood she had never once visited in her life, a poor, forgotten corner of Philadelphia. A place her company rarely mentioned. A place where people like her didn't go without a driver. For the first time in a very long time, Victoria Hale wasn't driving toward power, wealth, or influence. She was driving toward a man her company had tried to erase. A man she owed everything. A man the world had mistaken for a monster. The engine roared as she accelerated into the dark, and somewhere beyond the streetlights, Marcus Hall was waiting at the edge of collapse. The building was old enough to have a voice of its own, wood, groaning pipes, clanking walls, whispering with drafts that slipped through cracks. As Victoria climbed the narrow, uneven stairwell, each step answered her with a tired creak. The air smelled faintly of frying oil from someone's dinner, and the sour trace of a broken heater struggling to keep up. This place wasn't just unfamiliar to her. It was a different universe. A child's voice echoed beyond the thin hallway, a small cough, a shuffle, then the soft scrape of furniture being moved. Victoria raised her hand and knocked. The door opened just an inch, held firmly by a chain lock. A boy peeked out, dark-haired, pale eyes, too old for 10. Eli. She knew him instantly from his school file, though the picture hadn't shown the tremble in his voice when he spoke. "Hi. Can I help you?" His innocence hit her like a blow. "My name is Victoria," she said softly. "I need to speak with your dad." The boy hesitated, glancing over his shoulder. Then he unlatched the chain and pulled the door open wider. "You can come in," he whispered. But he's not doing so good. The apartment felt colder inside than the hallway. Not cold like winter cold, like someone had stopped caring whether the heat worked at all. A loose heater rattled faintly near the kitchen, blowing more noise than warmth. A tiny pot of soup sat on the stove, untouched. Victoria's gaze swept the small space. There was a blanket strewn on the floor, a damp towel near the bathroom door, the television humming static in the background. The exhaustion in the room felt alive, almost sentient. "Where is he?" she asked quietly. Eli pointed toward the bedroom. Victoria stepped inside. Marcus lay on a thin, uneven mattress pushed against the wall. His face was gray, his eyes sunk in his breathing, shallow and uneven. Sweat clung to his skin, but when she touched his forehead gently, his temperature burned against her palm. He was feverish, weak, dehydrated, and beneath it all broken in a way that wasn't physical. His eyes fluttered open at her touch. Recognition flickered, followed by something bitter. A hollow laugh left his lips. "Well, this is new. The CEO, visiting the janitor she fired." "Marcus." He waved a weak hand, though the gesture barely lifted off the mattress. "What did HR send you? Need to make sure the monster isn't planning revenge." His breath hitched. "You can tell them I'm too tired to ruin anyone's optics today." His voice cracked on that last word. Optics. the word that had been used to bury him. Victoria felt something knot in her throat. Not guilt alone, shame, deep, corrosive shame. "I didn't come here for them," she said. "I came here because I saw the truth." He blinked, trying to focus. The truth. Which version, the one on TV or the one they buried? She knelt beside him, lowering her voice. "I saw the raw footage." For the first time, a crack ran through his numb expression. She continued her words steady despite the ache in her chest. "You saved my life, and we punished you for it. My company crushed the only person who did the right thing that day." He swallowed. His next words were barely audible. "They called me a predator." Victoria closed her eyes. She heard the pain in that sentence shock humiliation, a wound carved deeper than any physical hit he'd taken in the boardroom. He turned his face slightly away. "My son heard it too. He asked me if it was true." Eli stood quietly at the door listening. The air felt heavy enough to bruise. "Marcus," she whispered, "you don't deserve this. Not any of it." Then she felt it, the heat radiating off him, the tremor in his hands, the way his body seemed to sink into the mattress as though gravity itself had doubled. She pressed her hand to his forehead again. "You're burning up." He let out a thin breath. "Just tired." "Tired doesn't make someone collapse," she replied. "You need help." "I don't want a hospital," he muttered. "Can't afford." "You don't have a choice," she said firmly. "You're dehydrated, feverish, and you're fading. I'm not watching the man who saved my life die in a dark apartment because my company failed him." He tried to argue, tried to sit up, but his strength failed halfway and he dropped back against the mattress with a small groan. That was enough. Victoria grabbed her phone. Her fingers moved quickly, voice steady despite the rising urgency. "This is 911, she said when the operator answered. "Male patient, late 30s. Fever, dehydration possible, severe exhaustion. Weak responsiveness. Send an ambulance to 1143 Monroe Street, Unit 2B. Eli rushed into the room, fear spilling from him. "Is my dad going to be okay?" Victoria took his hand, squeezing gently. "We're going to make sure he is." Minutes later, distant sirens began to wail, soft at first, then louder, building like a promise. Marcus heard them. His eyelids fluttered. "I didn't want any of this." "I know," she whispered. "You wanted to save someone. And you did." When the paramedics entered the room, filled with purposeful sounds, the clatter of equipment, the hiss of oxygen, the rustle of Velcro straps, they lifted Marcus, gently securing him to the stretcher. Eli's voice cracked. "Dad, please don't leave me." Marcus tried to lift his hand. It shook too hard. So Victoria stepped forward, guiding Eli closer, placing the boy's small hand into Marcus's weak one. Marcus managed to whisper, fragile but still a father's vow. "I'm here. I'm trying." Then he winced as the stretcher locked in place. As the paramedics rolled him toward the ambulance, Victoria stepped beside them. She climbed into the back without waiting to be invited. She settled beside the stretcher, gripping the rail with determination. The interior smelled of plastic antiseptic and the faint metallic whisper of fear. He had fought to keep her heart beating on the cold floor of a boardroom. Now she would fight to keep him alive on the cold metal bed of an ambulance. The world had pushed Marcus Hall to the edge, and Victoria Hale was not going to lose him to the darkness she helped create. The doors slammed shut with a final echoing clang, and the ambulance roared into the night, carrying all of them toward a battle that none of them could yet see. The hospital room hummed with a soft, steady calm, the distant wheels of a medication cart rolling down the hall, the quiet murmur of nurses exchanging notes, the rhythmic beep, beep, from Marcus's monitor. Morning light filtered through the blinds, but it wasn't bright or warm. It felt careful, like even the sun didn't want to disturb him. Marcus stirred first. He didn't open his eyes. He just breathed, slow, foggy, almost surprised that breath still came at all. Then he felt something soft near his hand. A blanket draped over Eli. A second blanket draped over himself. And the faint scent of a woman's perfume, subtle, expensive, unmistakably out of place in this sterile room. When he finally opened his eyes, his vision formed around the figure sitting in the corner. Victoria Hale. Head tilted back against the chair. Arms crossed, but not defensively, more like she had been guarding the room all night. Her coat draped over the chair behind her. Her phone dark in her lap. She had been there for hours. Eli slept curled up on a small recliner beside the bed, his face peaceful in a way Marcus hadn't seen in days. For one suspended moment, Marcus let himself breathe it in, the safety, the strange stillness, the surreal truth that Victoria wasn't just a headline or a distant CEO right now. She was a person, one who had stayed. But then reality washed over him like cold water. He shifted on the bed, swallowing against the ache in his throat. "He shouldn't be here," he whispered, nodding at Eli. "Hospitals scare him." Victoria lifted her head slowly, her voice soft as if she knew loudness would shatter something fragile. "He wouldn't leave, and I didn't want to send him away alone." He let out a shaky breath. "You stayed all night." "Yes," she said simply. No pride, no dramatics, just truth. Silence wrapped around them for a long moment, thick but strangely gentle. Then she stood and stepped closer to his bed. "Marcus," she began, her voice steady but threaded with something like remorse. "I owe you answers, and an apology. A real one." He stared at her, the memory of humiliation still fresh in his veins. "Apology for what? Destroying my life? Calling me a danger? Or letting them paint me as some kind of predator?" Victoria absorbed every word without flinching. She didn't defend herself, didn't deflect, didn't hide behind corporate polish. "I know," she whispered, "and I won't insult you by pretending this was a misunderstanding." She met his eyes. It was wrong, deeply wrong. He waited for more. Something in him, something tired, bruised, needed more. She took a breath. "I saw the footage, Marcus. The real footage. Start to finish. I saw what you did, the way you moved, the way you fought for me when everyone else froze." The words hit him harder than he expected. His jaw tightened. "And yet they fired me. That's why I'm here." She lowered her voice. "Because they fired the wrong person, and they did it under my name." Marcus looked away, discomfort flickering across his face. "You didn't know." "I should have known," she corrected. "It's my company, my people, my responsibility." He clenched his fist weakly. "Knowing now won't fix what they've already done." "No," she agreed quietly. "But I intend to fix everything I still can." Eli stirred in the chair beside them, half waking, mumbling something about homework. Marcus softened at the sound but didn't interrupt the conversation. Victoria gestured toward the sleeping boy. "He deserves better." "You both do." Marcus swallowed hard, voice dropping. "I'm tired, Victoria. I can't keep fighting a battle I didn't start." Her tone gentled further. "You don't have to fight alone anymore." He exhaled shakily. "Why now? Why help me now, when everything's already burned?" For a moment, she didn't answer. Then she stepped closer, the truth falling from her like something she had carried for too long. "Because I know what it's like to make a decision that destroys someone." Marcus looked up, startled. She continued, her voice nearly breaking. "Years ago, a worker at one of our plants filed a complaint. Long shifts, poor ventilation. I dismissed it, told the board to handle it." Her eyes clouded. 2 months later, he took his own life. The confession hung in the air. Raw, unvarnished, devastating. "That tragedy changed me," she whispered. "Or at least, I thought it did. I promised myself I would never be blind to suffering again. And yet, here I am." She pressed her hand to her chest, the memory still alive in her voice. You saved my life, and the company I built almost destroyed yours. I won't let that stand. Marcus swallowed, the tightness in his chest shifting. He wanted to believe her. Maybe a part of him already did, but he had been beaten down too long to accept hope easily. What do you want from me? He asked quietly. Nothing for myself, she replied, but I want the truth to be seen. Clearly, publicly, officially. He blinked. You want to clear my name? I want you reinstated, she said firmly, compensated, protected, and I want accountability for everyone who buried the truth. His breathing paused. This wasn't pity. This wasn't charity. It was something different, something fierce, something intentional. And, she added, choosing her words with care, I want your help, if you'll give it. My help, he repeated. I'm launching a full-scale restructuring of how we care for employees, she explained. Not the polished nonsense we put in brochures. Real safety, mental health support, emergency response training, a system that protects the invisible people, the ones no one ever asks about. She met his eyes. You know what it feels like to be abandoned, to fight alone, to be erased. I can't build a system for those people without someone who understands them. Marcus let the words sink in. He was silent for a long time. Finally, he whispered, I don't want to be a PR mascot. Victoria's voice softened. Good. I don't need one. I need a man who won't lie for convenience, someone who wants truth to stand straight again. Truth. Stand straight. Something inside him stirred. Then she said the line that shifted everything. Marcus, will you stand next to me, not behind me, not under me, beside me? The room held its breath. Before he could answer, footsteps approached outside the door. The press secretary's voice filtered through. Ms. Hale, the reporters are gathering. They want a statement. Victoria looked at Marcus, her gaze steady. Then let's give them one, she whispered. The world outside the hospital door did not wait for healing. It roared. The moment Victoria and Marcus stepped into the lobby, her still pale him, still weak but upright, the air swelled with the sound of cameras sparking to life. Reporters called her name from every direction. Shoes scraped against tile. Microphones shook in trembling hands. The press conference space had been thrown together in haste, a collapsible podium, a backdrop with the company logo, and a ring of cameras so bright they washed the room in artificial daylight. Marcus hesitated at the threshold. Crowds had never frightened him before. Fires had, cliffs had, collapsing structures had. Not people. But today, people felt worse. Victoria caught the tremor in his breath. She leaned in, her voice low, firm. You don't have to speak. Just stand with me. He nodded once, steadying himself. The murmur in the crowd grew louder as she approached the podium. Someone whispered, Is that the janitor? Another hissed, He's the one from the video. A third muttered, What is she doing bringing him here? Victoria lifted her chin, and suddenly the room fell into a hush that felt almost reverent. Thank you all for coming, she began, her voice steady despite the weight behind it. I'm here to address the incident that occurred last week, my medical emergency and the actions taken in response. A dozen cameras clicked. What happened next was not rehearsed. It was not corporate, it was personal. The man standing beside me, she said, gesturing toward Marcus, is the reason I'm alive. A ripple moved through the press, shock, confusion, a few gasps. He administered CPR immediately when I collapsed, she continued. He did it correctly. He did it bravely. And he did it while others stood frozen. Every word sliced through the false narratives like a blade. But that isn't the story the world saw, she said. Her voice softened, anger threaded through the calm. The world saw an 8-second clip, edited, weaponized, and stripped of context. And my company allowed that clip to define him. She paused. The silence felt electric. That was a failure of leadership, she said quietly. My leadership. Marcus felt the room shift, eyes landing on him differently now, not as suspicion, not as scandal, as a man at the center of something larger than himself. Victoria continued. Effective immediately, an independent investigation will take place. Every decision made after my collapse, including his termination, will be reviewed. Then she looked out over the crowd, her expression cold steel. And we will right every wrong. The noise of reporters exploded. Shouted questions ricocheted off the walls. Is this an admission of liability? Will the board respond to your statement? Is the janitor being reinstated? Ms. Hale, are you protecting him? Because he saved your life. But then her phone buzzed violently on the podium. A message from her financial advisor flashed across the screen. Stock price dropping fast. Investors panicking. Graham calling for emergency board meeting. The moment she stepped away from the podium, her chief of staff rushed to her. Victoria, Graham's already spinning this. He's telling investors you've lost objectivity, that you're compromising the company to cover your own embarrassment. Her expression hardened. Of course he is. She and Marcus exchanged a glance, a silent understanding that the real battle had just begun. Hours later, the boardroom held a storm fiercer than any camera flash. Graham Locke stood at the head of the table, voice booming. This is reckless, Victoria. Stockholders want stability, not emotional crusades. Victoria kept her tone even. This isn't emotional. It's factual. Really, Graham countered. You dragged a suspended employee into a press event. You made a public admission without consulting the board. Do you understand the damage you've caused? I understand the damage you caused, she said, deliberately burying the truth to avoid liability, allowing a false narrative to destroy him. You didn't protect the company. You protected yourself. Members of the board shifted uncomfortably. Papers rustled. Someone coughed. Graham slammed a file onto the table. You're compromised, Victoria. You cannot lead objectively. I'm calling for a vote to reassess your fitness as CEO. Marcus tensed. He knew what was happening. He'd seen it in firehouses and precincts. When someone in power felt threatened, they turned every resource against the one person trying to stand up. Victoria didn't flinch. You can call for your vote, she said, but I'm not stepping aside while you bury the truth again. Graham shot back. What truth? That a janitor with a history of instability acted outside his scope. Marcus stiffened. History of what Graham's eyes flicked toward him, cold, calculating. You were in a bar fight 5 years ago. You filed for psychological leave after a fire incident. You've been diagnosed with Victoria, cut in sharply. Enough. But Graham wasn't done. The media already has it. A little push in custody services will want to reevaluate his fitness as a parent. A razor blade of fear ripped through Marcus. Marcus, Victoria whispered urgently. Don't react. That's exactly what he wants. But the hurt was already rising in him. My son is the only thing I know. Her voice softened. And he won't take him. Not while I'm here. She turned back to Graham. If you weaponize a man's trauma for political gain, then you're unfit to lead anything, including this board. The room stilled. One of the older board members leaned forward, fingers steepled. His voice was low, worn, honest. I've seen men fall apart under pressure, and I've seen men stand in fire. He nodded toward Marcus. That man stood in fire last week. None of us did. Graham's jaw tightened. He knew the tide was shifting, but he wasn't done fighting. Fine, he spat. If you want your truth, let's put it all on record. Full footage, full testimony, full review. He pointed toward Marcus. But when this blows up, remember you brought him back into this. Victoria didn't smile, but there was a quiet fire in her eyes. We'll bring the truth back, she said. All of it. Meanwhile, miles away at a newly assigned apartment arranged by Victoria's team, a social worker knocked gently on the door. Eli answered. She smiled politely. Too politely. I just need to do a routine safety evaluation. Eli hesitated. My dad isn't home. That's fine, the woman said. I only need to look around. Her inspection was thorough. Too thorough. She checked every cupboard, every corner, every detail. Eli's heart thudded loudly in the quiet room. She left moments later with a soft, practiced smile, that kind of smile people used when they were about to cause trouble. Night settled over the city like a warning. Marcus's phone buzzed with a news alert. Single father with a violent past linked to CEO controversy. Child Services asking questions. Eli looked up at him, eyes trembling. Dad, they're saying you're bad again. This time. Is it true? Marcus's breath broke. For the second time in his life, Marcus Hall was walking into a fire, but this time, he didn't know if he'd come back out. The boardroom looked different this time. Same polished table, same high-backed chairs, same skyline stretching beyond the glass, but the air felt charged electric, like the room itself remembered what had happened inside it. The place where Victoria had fallen, where Marcus had fought for her life, where lies had been planted like seeds. Today, the room would become something else entirely. A courtroom. Microphones hummed softly as they were tested. Papers rustled. Voices murmured outside the door where reporters waited, sensing history rumbling beneath their feet. Marcus stood just beyond the threshold, adjusting the collar of a borrowed shirt. It wasn't fancy, not tailored, not new, but it was clean-pressed and chosen with care by Eli, who'd said shyly that Dad should look like a hero today. Marcus tried not to shake. He wasn't afraid of dying. He'd faced that many times. He was afraid of being seen, truly seen, for the first time since the nightmare began. Victoria approached from down the hall. She walked slowly, not because she was weak, but because every step felt deliberate, like she was anchoring the moment beneath her. "You ready?" she asked. Marcus let out a breath that trembled at the edges. "Does anyone ever feel ready for something like this?" "No," she said gently, "but you deserve to be heard." She touched the door, and together they entered the room. Inside, the board members sat in a semicircle, their expressions stiff, some nervous, some angry, some guarded, as though each carried a personal stake in the story about to unfold. The company's general counsel adjusted his glasses. "We'll start with the footage," he said. "The unedited tape." A screen lowered from the ceiling with a faint mechanical whir. The lights dimmed. Marcus's stomach twisted. It wasn't easy watching yourself fight for someone's life while a room full of powerful people debated whether you belonged there. Victoria didn't look at the screen. She looked at him instead, steady grounding, unflinching. Then the room filled with sound, her voice presenting numbers, her breath faltering, the crash of her body hitting the floor, gasps, confusion, and then Marcus tearing through the doorway. The footage captured everything with merciless honesty. The way he dropped to his knees before anyone else moved. The way he checked her pulse with practiced hands. The way he whispered, "Come on, don't you do this?" with a cracking urgency that made a few board members look away. The camera caught him performing compressions, strong, rhythmic, perfectly timed. It caught him leaning in for rescue breaths, his voice trembling with desperation. It caught the moment someone struck him across the back. It caught the struggle, the shouts, the chaos. It caught the truth. When the video ended, the silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full crowded with emotion none of them could hide. Someone cleared his throat. The oldest board member, silver-haired, stern former military, leaned forward. "I've been in combat," he said quietly. "I know what a man looks like when he's fighting to save a life, and I know what a room looks like when it fails." His gaze swept across the table. "We failed. He didn't." Graham Locke leaned back, fingers knotted together. "Let's not forget the greater context," he said quickly. "This wasn't a random emergency. This was a high-risk situation involving the CEO. The optics were optics." Victoria said, sharply cutting him off. "We're talking about a life." "My life, and you're talking about optics." Graham's jaw tightened. It's more complex than that. He tried again. There are legal considerations. Legal considerations you helped shape, Victoria replied. You let an edited clip define him because it protected the board from embarrassment. And when the truth had a chance to surface, you buried it. Graham shot back. I acted in the best interest of the company. That's my duty. No, she corrected calmly. A leader acts in the best interest of people. A coward hides behind procedure. Marcus inhaled sharply, unsure where to look. He had never seen someone stand up for him like this. Never. Victoria turned to him. Marcus, you deserve the chance to speak. He froze. Every eye in the room turned toward him. He took a breath the kind firefighters took before stepping into thick smoke and stepped forward. His voice was soft, unpolished, vulnerable. I didn't come in that room to be a hero, he said. I came in because someone needed help. That's what I used to do. His eyes lowered. What I failed to do, once. A heavy pause. When I heard her fall, something inside me just moved. It wasn't about titles or rules or roles. It was life or death, and I couldn't watch someone die again. He swallowed hard. I know I'm not perfect. I've made mistakes. I've struggled. But I know CPR better than most people in this building. I've held dying kids. I've carried fathers out of burning rooms. I've had to look mothers in the eyes and tell them their child didn't make it. His voice cracked, but he kept going. I would do it again. Every single time. Even if the world calls me a monster for it. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then the oldest board member stood. I've heard enough, he said. It's clear this man acted with courage and competence. What I saw in that footage wasn't misconduct. It was integrity. Another board member nodded slowly. Agreed. A third leaned forward. He saved our CEO's life while we stood there paralyzed. The tide had shifted. Graham felt it. He slammed his palm against the table. This is outrageous. You're letting emotions cloud judgment. Victoria stepped closer to him. Her voice was steady. No, Graham. For the first time in years, they're seeing clearly. Her gaze hardened. You didn't just misjudge Marcus. You weaponized vulnerability. You manipulated fear. You chose convenience over truth. Graham's face flushed with anger. You're done, Victoria said softly. Not by my hand. By your own choices. The General Counsel spoke up. We will proceed with a formal vote regarding Mr. Locke's position. Marcus stood there stunned. For once, the room didn't look like an enemy. In the very room where his life had been shattered, Marcus Hall finally watched the truth stand taller than the lies. But the fire wasn't extinguished yet. The vote took less than 3 minutes. 3 minutes to dismantle the carefully built power Graham Locke had wielded for decades. 3 minutes to decide the fate of a man who had misled an entire corporation. The board chair, an even-handed man with a calm voice, read the result aloud. By majority vote, Graham Locke is hereby removed from his position as chairman of the board, effective immediately. A few pens clicked. One person exhaled. Someone whispered, about time. Graham didn't move. He sat frozen in his seat, jaw-tight eyes burning with disbelief. He had never expected to lose, not here, not ever. Victoria did not gloat. She didn't even look triumphant. She looked relieved, like a woman finally exhaling after years of holding her breath. With a clipped tone, the board chair added, HR leadership will also be restructured, and an external audit will review all termination procedures conducted in the last 2 years. Every head turned toward Marcus. It was the first time anyone at that table had looked at him with something resembling humility. Graham rose abruptly, gathering his papers with shaking hands. This is a mistake, he hissed. She's compromised, and you're all too blind to see it. Victoria met his stare calmly. Goodbye, Graham. He glared at Marcus as he passed one final attempt to intimidate. It didn't work. Marcus held his gaze without flinching. For the first time, Marcus didn't feel like he was in the wrong room. He felt like he was in the right one. Hours later, after the board had dispersed and the building settled into the hush of late afternoon, an official company statement was released. It was strong, clear, unambiguous. We acknowledge grave mistakes in the handling of the medical emergency involving CEO Victoria Hale. The company formally apologizes to Marcus Hall for wrongful termination, defamation, and emotional harm caused by incomplete and manipulated information. The line Marcus requested came next, his line, not theirs. This was not a misunderstanding. This was a failure of integrity, and we will correct it. When he read it, his breath caught. For months he had been called a monster, a threat, a danger. Now finally the truth had a voice. Eli sat beside him at the kitchen table of their temporary apartment, swinging his legs nervously. "Does this mean everyone knows you didn't do anything bad?" Dad Marcus nodded, unable to speak. He ruffled his son's hair. Eli smiled, small, shy, hopeful. "Good." Marcus realized something then. Something simple but powerful. His son never doubted him. Not for a second. Even when the world did. A few hours later, Victoria asked him to meet her on the annex floor, a construction space reserved for future expansion. The air smelled like raw lumber and dust. Light spilled in through tall windows, washing over the empty room like a fresh start. No desks, no polished floors, no hierarchy. Just space, possibility, a blank page. Marcus stepped inside. "Did you want to talk about the press statement?" Victoria shook her head. She stood in the center of the room, hands loosely clasped expression, thoughtful. "No," she said quietly. "This is something else." He approached slowly. "What's on this floor?" "A rebuild," she said. "A total redesign of our employee support systems from the janitorial team to senior staff." She turned to face him fully. "And I want you to lead it." Marcus froze. "Lead it," he repeated, stunned. "Victoria, I don't have degrees or certifications for something like that." "You have something better," she said gently. "Lived experience." He blinked. "You're offering me a corporate job, I'm offering you a mission," she corrected. "Director of Human Integrity and Safety. You design and oversee everything. Mental health support, crisis response, anonymous reporting, emergency training. A system built by someone who's actually been ignored, overlooked, underestimated." Marcus opened and closed his mouth. No words came. He had envisioned 100 futures for himself over the years. This had never been one of them. "I don't know how to talk to executives," he said quietly. "I don't fit in rooms like this." "You fit in my room," Victoria said softly. "And the rooms built wrong are the ones that need you most." He swallowed hard. His voice came out thin. "What if I fail?" Victoria stepped closer than she had ever stood. Her voice was gentle but firm. "Marcus, you already succeeded where every man in this building failed. You stood in a room full of power and did the right thing. That makes you a leader." Something in him broke open, something tight around his ribs, something he had held for years. He laughed softly, disbelieving. "You really think I can do this?" "I don't think," she said. "I know." He rubbed the back of his neck, overwhelmed. I want to help. I want to make sure no one goes through what I did." Her eyes warmed. "That she said is exactly why you're the right one." They walked through the empty annex together, imagining what it could become. A break room for the night shift, Marcus suggested. A real one with couches, not folding chairs. Victoria nodded. "Done. A fund to help workers in emergencies," he added. "People shouldn't lose their homes because of one bad week." She smiled. "Done. A hotline for reporting abuse, anonymous, safe." "That one," she said softly, "I'll help build myself." They paused near a window, the golden light brushing across them. A quiet laugh escaped them when they realized they were debating whether the night room should have recliners or sofas. It wasn't flirtatious, not romantic, not yet. but it was something warmer, something human. Marcus finally turned to her. Victoria. Why are you doing all this? She looked out the window, voice low. Because you showed me who I really was when I collapsed, and I didn't like the version of myself who woke up afterward. Then she met his gaze, steady and bright. You helped me find the courage to rewrite my story. I'd like to help you rewrite yours too. He inhaled the weight of her words settling deep inside him. And then, with fingers trembling slightly, he took the pen she offered and signed the contract. Not as a janitor, not as a scapegoat, as the director of human integrity and safety. Victoria smiled. You're not working for me, she said softly. You're working with me, and with everyone who needs someone fighting for them. Marcus nodded, breath unsteady but sure. For the first time in a long time, he felt the ground beneath him solidify. But outside that window change had only begun, and the world was already preparing to watch him step fully into the light. Time in the weeks that followed didn't move quickly or slowly. It moved purposefully, carrying Marcus and Victoria into a life neither had expected, one careful step at a time. The first sound in the chapter was not chaos, nor fear, nor fire. It was laughter. Soft, tired laughter from night shift custodians discovering the new break room chairs that didn't wobble, couches that felt like real rest, a microwave that didn't spark when someone heated soup. It was the sound of a man from maintenance calling the emergency hotline and whispering, "Thank you," when someone actually answered. It was the gentle clatter of construction tools as volunteers installed shelves for a new employee pantry fully stocked. It was emails pinging in Marcus's inbox, each one a small echo of healing. Thank you for seeing us. No one ever asked what we needed before. I didn't think anyone important cared. And in every sound, Marcus heard purpose rising again in his chest, new, steady earned. The National Conference Hall buzzed with noise-low murmurs, shuffling programs, the creak of chairs. Hundreds of leaders from across the country had gathered to hear the keynote speech titled, From Silence to Safety, Changing the Way We Treat Our Workers. Marcus stood behind the heavy velvet curtain, hands pressed against his thighs. The fabric smelled faintly like dust and old applause. His heart drummed slow, deep, steady. He wasn't wearing a suit, he had insisted on that. He wore a simple button-down sleeves rolled once the way he used to dress for late shifts. It grounded him. Beside him, Eli tugged lightly at his hand. "Dad," he whispered, "I'm recording this on my tablet. I want to show my teacher." Marcus smiled, brushing his thumb over Eli's knuckles. "Yeah." Eli nodded proudly. She said, "Heroes come in all kinds of uniforms. I told her yours used to be blue." A tight breath caught in Marcus's chest. Before he could reply, Victoria stepped beside them. She wore no corporate armor today, no severe jacket, no cold expression. Just a simple dress and a softness in her features that came from choosing the harder path and surviving it. "You ready?" she asked. Marcus exhaled. "As ready as I'll ever be." She touched his arm, grounding him. "You earned this seat, Marcus. Every word you speak out there. People will feel it. They'll remember it." He believed her. For the first time, he truly believed her. The lights dimmed. The host stepped onto the stage, and now he announced, "Please welcome Director Marcus Hall." The curtain parted. The applause felt like a wave. Not loud, not thunderous, but warm, honest, human. Marcus walked to the podium. Eli sat in the front row, clutching his tablet like it was treasure. Victoria took a seat beside him, hands folded in her lap, her eyes never once leaving Marcus. He gripped the podium edges, took a breath, and began. "I used to think courage only looked one way," he said. "Running into burning buildings, pulling people from wreckage, wearing a uniform." The audience stilled, listening closely. "But I learned something the hard way. Courage isn't always fire and adrenaline. Sometimes it's quieter." He let the words settle. "Sometimes it's showing up for one more shift even when the world doesn't see you. Sometimes it's speaking up even when you're shaking. Sometimes it's refusing to let a lie define who you are. His voice remained steady, but inside something lifted like years of silence finally rising into the air. I was called a lot of things this year, he continued. A threat, a danger, a man who did something indecent. He inhaled slowly. But the truth is simple. I was just trying to save a life. And in the process, mine fell apart. A rustle moved through the crowd, sympathy recognition. What brought me back wasn't money, or a title, or a press statement. His gaze softened. It was one person, choosing to stand in the fire with me. Victoria's eyes glistened, but she didn't look away. And today, Marcus said, I am choosing to stand with all of you, with every worker who has been silenced, overlooked, or treated as replaceable. We can't rewrite the past, but we can decide how we tell the story moving forward. He leaned closer to the microphone. And courage, real courage, is building a world where the invisible finally get a seat at the table. When he stepped back, the applause rose slowly. Not explosive lasting, a standing acknowledgement, a promise. Eli ran up to him afterward, nearly knocking him backward with a hug. Dad. You didn't even stutter. Marcus laughed. I almost did. But you didn't, Eli declared, and Mom would have been proud. Marcus swallowed hard, hugging his son tighter. Then Victoria approached, smile-warm eyes soft. You did beautifully, she murmured. I didn't faint, he teased weakly. You didn't. She nudged his shoulder gently. And you rewrote something today, for all of us. He nodded. Thanks for giving me the chance. You earned it, she repeated. All of it. Night fell gently over the city when they finally reached their new apartment, a place with sturdy walls working heat and a small balcony overlooking distant lights. Not a broken balcony. A new one. Marcus stepped outside with Eli, the cool breeze brushing their faces. Cars hummed below. A distant train rumbled. Somewhere someone played a soft guitar through an open window. The sounds felt kinder now. Eli leaned against the railing. Dad. Are you happy now? Marcus looked at him, the boy who had held his hand through storms bigger than he ever deserved. He felt the truth rise easily, peacefully. Yeah, he said, for the first time. I really am. A quiet moment passed. Then footsteps sounded behind them. Victoria joined them on the balcony, standing close enough that their shoulders nearly touched. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. In a world quick to judge and slow to see, one man rose from silence, one woman chose redemption, and together they rewrote more than their own stories. They proved that dignity is not a privilege, but a right, that truth can outlive even the deepest cuts, and that sometimes the greatest courage is choosing to begin again. The city lights shimmered. The wind softened. 3 silhouettes stood quietly on the balcony, not broken anymore, but whole. And for the first time in a long time, everything felt exactly as it should be. And that, my friends, is the story of Marcus Hall, a single father who refused to let a lie define him, and a woman who found the courage to make things right before it was too late. If this story moved you, if it stirred something in your chest, then let it be a reminder that every person you meet is carrying a battle you know nothing about. Sometimes the strongest people are the ones no one notices. Sometimes the bravest hearts are found in the quietest corners of the world. And sometimes all it takes is one moment of compassion to change someone's life forever. Now I want to turn the spotlight to you. Have you ever witnessed a moment of unexpected courage? Have you ever seen someone step up when no one else would? Or maybe you yourself have walked through a season where the world misunderstood you. If you're comfortable, share your story in the comments below. You never know, your words might be exactly what someone else needs tonight. And, as always, let me know. Where are you watching from? I love seeing our little storytelling family gather from every corner of the world. If this story touched your heart, Please make sure to subscribe, and share it with someone who might need a little hope today. Thank you truly for spending your time with me. Your support, your comments, your kindness. They turn these stories into something much bigger than just a video. Until next time, my friends, take care of yourselves and take care of each other.